Now, do you remember when you first started actually going out there to get jobs, working in the theater?
Yeah, the first the first time I had any result was when I was in class. I was by this time married and starting a family, very young, and I realized I had to work and there was no money, and I was thinking, well, this is going to be the end of this. I'm going to have to go get a job. And somebody came through the class saying they're casting for a quiz show uh, down the street. Anybody here want to go down there? And I raised my hand. A bunch of other guys. We all ran down and auditioned for this quiz show, and I got it. And what it was, you're just a prop. And so I went down there completely naive. I was 21 and pretty young, and it was a show called Play Your Hunch with Merv Griffin. And it was a black and white quiz show. It was completely stupid, and but I didn't care, and because they said if you get there, you get $75, which was a big deal. And so I thought, oh. So they asked me a few questions, and they said, "Hey, you look fine. You look good. Where are you from?" I said, "L.A., Los Angeles." The guy writes it down, and he says, "What do you do?" And I said, "I'm an actor." No, I can't have that. And I said, "Oh, well, okay, then what? Well, but I am." No, you're not. Are you acting now? And I said, "Well, no." But he said, "Well, then you're not an actor, okay? We can't have that on the show. It looks staged. You've done something else, haven't you?" And I said, "Well, yeah. I was a laborer and worked in an oil field in Southern California. I was an artist." "Ah, good. That's good. You're an artist." So he writes that down. Well, I didn't know what all that was about, but when I went to do that, I said, "Well, what? So what do I got? What do I have to do?" And he said, "Nothing. Just stand there." I said, "Just stand there?" He said, "Yeah. You'll see. Don't worry about it. Just wear a nice tie and a jacket, sport jacket, and nothing too fancy, and just come on down." So I did, and I was all excited, and I made the mistake of telling friends, "I'm going to be on TV. I'm going to be on TV," you know, but I didn't know how. And what it was a dumb game where they had these three slats, screens, silhouetted screens, and above each one was a light and a letter, a numeral, X, Y, Z. And you had to stand behind one of the screens, me and two other guys.
Just as a silhouette?
Just as a silhouette. And a person on the front of the screen that was visible to the audience was apparently the twin brother of one of the people behind the screen. And so the contestants had to try to guess, looking at the guy and looking at the silhouettes, who was the twin brother. Really heady stuff, you know. I didn't know this, and I was just a silhouette who wasn't the twin brother. So I'm standing back there, and I said, "So what do I do?" He said, "Just stand there, and then the thing will come up, and Merv will ask you a couple of questions, and that's it." And I said, "Then I get my $75?" And they said, "Yeah." So anyway, I'm standing back there, and that's when I became aware, which later I was able to use in the film Quiz Show that I directed, that I could pull from a real live experience, because it was right at the end of that scandal time. And when Van Doren, $64,000 questions, they were being scandalized. Anyway, so I went down there just for the money. And when it was, I suddenly realized, why did I tell anybody that I'm going to be on this show? I'm just a silhouette. What a dumb thing. And then he said, "Well, let's find out. Let's see. Do we think it's X, Y, or Z?" And they'd comment, they said, "Well, X, they look too skinny, and too short, or too tall." Just, I thought, oh my God. And they said, "Well, let's find out what the answer is here. Is it X?" Which was me, right? And the thing lifts up, and there I am with a big light hitting me. And the audience goes, "Boo," because I wasn't the twin. And so my first introduction to show business was a big failure, you know. I got booed, yeah, I got booed because I wasn't the twin. And by that time, I was curdling with shame. And another guy was a truck driver, another guy was something else. And so then Merv bounces in and said, "Well, let's see who we have here. And what's your name? And let's see who the real people are here. What's your name?" And I said, "Bob Redford." And I was so humiliated. And he says, "And where are you from, Bob?" And I says, "L.A." He said, "L.A.?" Now, they'd obviously given him a L.A. joke because they knew it was. And I said, "L.A." And he said, "L.A., L.A." And he was from San Francisco, apparently. And he said, "I think I've heard of that place. Isn't that a little city just south of San Francisco?" And I said, "No, it's not. It's 450 miles south and bigger." And because that was hostility. And they said, "Whoa, what do you do?" And I says, "I'm an artist." "You're an artist?" let's see, do you do those things where they put ink and splotch it around, try to figure out whether you're crazy or not? I said, no, I don't do that at all. He said, well, let's go to our next. He got off me so fast, and I thought, oh man, this is what a move this was. Anyway, so I went to get my $75, and they gave me a fishing rod. And they told me that that was my $75. It was in a trade deal with Abercrombie & Fitch that I got a rod that was worth $75. So the whole thing was a bust, but that was my first experience in show.
Your first time that you're seen on a screen
Yeah.
is that in quiz show, talk about full circle.
Full circle.